Today's episode of the Get Your Comic On podcast may contain mild spoilers for the movies, shows, comic books, and games that we're discussing. And, if you're lucky, there might be some PG-13 language. So without further ado, let's get on with the show. Hey, super friends, it's Neil, and welcome to another brand new episode of the Get Your Comic On podcast. We are back, and we are going to be talking some very exciting topics this week, including the release of Marvel's first of 3 films this year, and the first big comic book movie of the year, Captain America: Brave New World. But before we get into all of that, I need to introduce you to my co-host for this episode. He's back. You may have seen him in the very first episode of this brand new season. It's Aaron. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. It's been a stressful week, but I'm happy to be talking about stuff like Marvel.
I'm really
because
confused as to where we are this week because
yeah,
I was at work at the beginning of the week, then I had a couple of
mm,
days off, and then I was back to work today. So yesterday felt
mm,
like Sunday. Today sort of feels like Monday, but I also keep thinking it's Wednesday, and I'm pretty sure it's actually Thursday.
yeah. I know exactly what you mean. But for me, it's been relentless with work and just everything going on. That I keep thinking we're like a day forward.
Oh no, happy
So I
Friday.
keep thinking it's yeah. I'd love if it was Friday or Saturday, but it's not. We've still got a day to go.
But that being said, we are here a little bit later than we would normally have been this week to talk to you about some really fun stuff. We're going to be talking about some relatively big news stories that have been happening recently in the world of pop culture, a couple of TV related stories, and then something movie related, which is very close to my heart. We are going to be reviewing Captain America: Brave New World, which is currently in cinemas across the world. I should have said globe. That was the word world too many times. We're going to catch you up on a little bit of what comic books we are reading at the moment. So I've got a book that I really want to talk about, and Aaron's going to talk about some of the stuff that he's reading. Really exciting. We have competition, so I have some fun prizes to give away to those of you watching and listening at home, which is in partnership with some friends of ours at the Geek Garage. I will tell you all about them later on. So it's a lot. We have a packed show this week, which is fun.
Mm,
I'm finally back in my groove again. This is the 4th episode since we brought this podcast back, which, if you were listening to our first episode, is in no small part thanks to Aaron. So it's been fun and I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, I've only been on the one episode, but I've enjoyed hearing the new. I know what I mean when I say this. I've enjoyed hearing the other episodes, especially the one that you did with Michael talking about Harley Quinn.
Ooh, amazing.
Yeah. Even though I've not seen the show, it's
Yeah,
just interesting to see and hear
it's a
all the other
really
stuff
fun
going
show
on.
if it's one you've not watched.
Mm,
And they still
yeah.
haven't said whether there'll be any more after this current season. So if you
Mm,
were in I want to binge a show in its entirety, you might be in
yeah.
that position right now, which is kind of exciting because
Ooh.
it's fun. It's a lot. It's fun.
I've seen enough clips from the show to know that it like really doesn't take itself that seriously
No,
at all,
no,
and I just especially when it's a comic book property, I love it when it can go a little bit like Deadpool, where it's like it can go for that without going too far, and it knows just where to ride that line a little
exactly
bit.
that.
That's the vibe I'm getting
Yep.
from the clips, and it does make me want. I think when it was initially released, I was like, not sure. But the more I've seen, and obviously with you two praising it, I was like, okay, I really need to, really need to get on this.
It's that classic thing with the character, though, where some people feel like she's really oversaturated because she was obviously
Mm,
an invention in 1992, so she's really not that
mm,
old. And she got
mm,
so popular so fast that she was
mm,
kind of everywhere instantly. And then you get the Margot Robbie version, which is obviously super, super popular. Kaylee is amazing in that role in this cartoon as well. And this
mm,
has really got a cult following, so it is just sort of everywhere. And so I can completely understand why some people are like, do you know what? I kind of feel like
mm.
she's all over the Arkham games. She's just sort of like too in your face. But it
Yeah,
is really worth watching if you get a chance to.
cool. I will definitely try and. Is it what's it on in the UK? Because I
It's a
don't
bit of a weird one.
actually.
So it was on Channel 4 on demand. It doesn't
Mm.
seem to be there right now, and some of it had aired on E4, which is why it was all within like the Channel 4 brand. But it seems like right
Right.
now the only place you can get it is if you buy it digitally. Um,
Oh,
yes, actually
okay.
you can get it on Blu-ray and DVD as well. Sorry, I should say.
Okay.
So you can either get it physically or you can watch it digitally. It doesn't seem to be sort of streaming anywhere at the moment.
Mm.
That might change
Okay.
with season 5 coming out, though. I don't know if it will continue to be on Channel 4 or not. We're
Okay.
going to end up doing a Harley Quinn part two. Which does segue me perfectly into the first of the kind of news topics that I wanted to talk about. And this is sort of the first time we're doing a news story in this new version of this podcast. So if you've been listening to us for a long time, you would know I'd normally play that really cheesy little news jingle, and then we'd go to like the news desk and I'd tell you about the stories. But that was one of the things that I was really struggling with because I had nobody to bounce off in doing it. So now we're going to do it slightly more conversationally. And Aaron and I earlier on today were talking about what we were going to put in this part of the podcast, and had
Mm.
kind of come up with a couple of news stories. And then suddenly a thing came bounding back into my brain that was like, "Oh my God, how have I not talked about this out loud to anyone yet?" Um, but then I also remembered that actually this is something you haven't watched, right?
Yep.
So I'm now going to go like completely fanboy mad, and you're going to be like, "Well," and that is the news that Buffy is back. Maybe, possibly,
Mm.
hopefully, fingers crossed. So if you weren't aware of this news, a couple of weeks ago, Deadline reported that Hulu is working on a kind of continuation of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which would bring Sarah Michelle Gellar back and would be sort of masterminded, executive produced, and would have a pilot episode directed by Chloe Zhao, who you would know from Marvel's The Eternals and Oscar winner for a film that I can't
No,
remember. Thank
Nomadland.
you very
Nomadland.
much. Um, and so that news broke on Deadline. We all went completely nuts for it, and like all of us that grew up with Buffy the Vampire Slayer were like, "Oh my God, it's back finally!" Which is not at all ironic that I'm in the middle of a rewatch at the moment. And then Sarah Michelle Gellar came out and said, "Yes, I am involved. It's been around 3 years since the first conversations about it happened. It's taken a very, very long time to get them to a point where they've got some writers on board, but there is no kind of commitment to film anything yet. They have a story idea, they have a story that's coming together, they have a sort of structure that is coming together, but they're not ready to film anything yet. So it's sort of it might be back, but we're not,
Mm.
it's not definitely happening just yet. So I wanted to touch on it because it's very, 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 very exciting. Uh, but also, okay, what is your awareness of the pop culture phenomenon that is Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
It's I
Other than
know the
having to watch Paul
base.
and I going completely like fanboy crazy talking about it at dinner the other day.
I know the basic premise. I know the fact that it's based off of a film that came out in like the early to mid '90s.
Yes.
That
Which was
the
very
show's then,
unsuccessful.
yeah. Um, I know a few bits here and there. I know some of the episodes as well because obviously because it is constantly regarded as like one of the best shows
Yes.
out there. I know like the fact that there is an episode where they're not allowed to talk. I know there's a musical episode. I know a few bits like that. I know obviously there's a few spin-offs. Yeah, I know a fair bit, and I know obviously some of the cast and the writers. But outside of that, it's one of those shows, and I think this is something I even said the other week when we met up. Is that it's one of those shows similar to the X Files where like
Yep.
I've been wanting to watch it for years. I've just never found the right time or the right reason to start it. And I think because this more applies to X Files because there's so much of it. I find it quite daunting to start.
Yeah.
But I do have every intention of wanting to start it. I just need to I need to find that catalyst. Plus finishing all the other current shows that are on that are also taking up my life.
155 episodes is a big commitment. 150
Mm,
hour-long episodes of TV is a big commitment. Plus,
mm.
then if you go on and you watch Angel, which is another 5 seasons of 22 episodes,
Oh,
um,
blimey.
so I mean, it's a big old commitment. It's almost the same kind of
Mm,
size as X-Files. So Buffy ran for 7 seasons. The first season's
mm.
13 episodes. X-Files ran for what was it, 9 full seasons in the original run, and then 2 shorter seasons for the reboot later on.
Yeah, I was gonna say when I checked Disney Plus, it said like 11 seasons, and I was like, whoa, okay.
I'm on season 9 at the moment. And as a younger person than me, um,
Mm,
is is there like a cultural? This is a genuine like in question for me now, just out of curiosity. Is there an
mm,
awareness in your generation
mm.
um, of how much of like a big deal it was for us slightly older people?
Yeah. No, I do get what you mean because I feel like even though
Because it finished in
I, th-
2003, so I was 17. It finished when I was 17. Just
yeah,
literally like it finished in May, and I was just turning 18 and going to uni. So you probably weren't
I,
born.
I would no, I was just working this out with my fingers. I think I was about like five or
There you
six.
go. So it is a
So
different
yeah,
generational thing. You wouldn't have been watching it of kind of 4 or 5 years.
no, no. I think for me because I was literally growing up just as it was
Mm,
ending. I I remember bits and pieces of it just being around. Like I vaguely remember it being. I think it was on like Channel 4 or E4 in like the afternoons or
it might have
evenings.
been, yeah.
Like I do vaguely remember that, and I think from like my generation where we grew up in the 2000s, there's definitely a case of there's a lot of things that have been released in the years since that I can obviously tell are heavily influenced
Yeah,
by that.
massively, massively.
Um, Examples escape my brain, but it's very like even having never seen Buffy, I know what the rough tone and dynamic is like.
Yeah,
I mean, if you watch any Joss Whedon
yeah,
show, you kind of get a gist straight away. And again, there's a lot of stuff. I think again, growing up with like the Scooby Doo films, even though they're written by James Gunn, there is a little bit to that where he feels like he's kind of borrowed the edginess from Buffy a
yeah.
little
True.
bit. And just a few other things that came out in the 2000s. It was like Buffy's the thing, and we're going to copy the formula.
Yeah,
So yeah, even though I've never seen it, I can tell that the influence is quite apparent on a lot of
yeah.
stuff. Even stuff that comes out today is still trying to like sort of borrow from it as much as it
A lot
can
of
a
the
little
people
bit.
that worked on it, like Drew Goddard, for instance, is one from
Mm,
it. Um, but there's a lot of people that worked on it that still work in TV or work in film now who do shows that
mm,
still have a lot of influence from it. It had this really wonderful
mm.
way of like, especially in sort of seasons 3 onwards, where because again you're doing 22 episodes a week, a season, a per season a
Bloody
year,
hell.
um,
Yeah.
which obviously you don't really get anymore.
Mm,
But they had this wonderful way of early on would
mm,
be very episode of the week and everything would be a different demon, different thing to conquer. But then
yeah.
the seeds of something else would be in there. And
Mm,
then the later you get through the season, the more important that becomes. And then the last 3 or 4 episodes are completely serialized into that
yeah.
arc that's gone all the way through. It
Mm,
was, I mean, there's obviously a lot to unpack with Joss Whedon and the things that have happened with him in subsequent years, but
yeah.
it's very hard to argue with how brilliantly that show came together because of
Mm,
based on his idea, all of the other writers and actors and everyone that worked on it. Because you can't solely
yeah.
attribute the success of it to him. Um,
Mm.
and I'm just so
I
excited that we might get some more.
I feel like as well, instead of shows that also copied its style, there's also a lot of show. I don't know how to best describe it. There's like every few like years or every decade, there is like a show that becomes a bit of a phenomenon,
Template.
and then like the next one then comes along, whether that is different style or
Yeah.
different tone.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like there were still ripple effects of that when I was a kid. Like for me, the phenomenon was like Doctor Who, and then Heroes, which I've still not quite got over those obsessions. I'm still heavily obsessed with them. Um,
Both, I would
and there was
actually
still,
argue that both, I mean, that era of Doctor Who and
mm,
Heroes, I think both take influence from Buffy as well.
yeah, there's a lot of, yeah. Now that you say that, actually,
RTD is definitely a Buffy fan.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, there is a lot of, there's more crossover than I thought.
I know when you start thinking about it, it's like, oh, well, because even so this might not mean much to you of having not watched Buffy,
Mm,
but to the degree of James Masters, who played Spike in Buffy, was introduced in
Mm,
season two, and is then a kind of a bit part in seasons three and four, and becomes a major character through five, six, seven, and then went
yeah.
over into Angel. Um,
Mm.
was in an episode or two of Torchwood because RTD is such a
Okay.
big fan that he wrote a character for him and brought him in,
Mm.
who was kind of like Captain Jack. Um, was a love interest, I think, of his. I think it's
I
season two of
do. I
Torchwood.
do know which character you mean. I've only seen bits and pieces of Torchwood, but I know exactly which one you mean.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. The
Hmm.
reason I asked that question actually was just because for me in my
Yeah.
generation, like it was the thing that. So it depended how you were watching it because if you were completely up to date with America, you were watching it on Sky One.
Yeah.
Um, if you were slightly behind, then you were watching it on BBC Two, where it was like Thursdays at 6:45, slightly edited,
Mm.
and then shown later in the week unedited.
Yeah.
But it's the thing that everyone was talking about on the school bus like
Mm.
the morning after the episode. It's like, oh my God, did you watch it last night? That was the thing
Yeah.
that my like everyone was talking about. So it was
Mm.
a real like a really big deal. And
Mm.
I actually just found uh, all my VHS box sets. So it's like the original box set show as well. Because what they used
Yeah.
to do was they used to do these really amazing video sets that were like three VHSs and it was half a season. So you get two
Mm.
boxes, six VHSs for a whole season. Um, but they did them
I
in
love
these
that.
really nice like slipcase boxes with
Mm.
really cool artwork, and it was like the precursor to the DVD box set. In fact, season
Yeah.
six was the first TV show I ever bought on DVD. It was my first box set ever. I think I still
That
have my DVDs somewhere as well. Um,
that
it was
that
just such a
description of
massive
the
phenomenon.
that description of the VHS actually reminds me of the first season of Doctor Who I got on DVD, the Christopher Eccleston one, where it was like
Oh yeah,
his DVD one, but it's only got like 3 or 4 episodes on it. His DVD two, DVD three, and they're all in separate individual cases, and you buy them separately,
yeah.
or you could just buy the box set.
Well, I honestly, I could probably fill up an entire podcast talking about it, which is ironic because they haven't even officially put anything to film or committed to filming anything.
Mm.
But I would very much like to do a deep divey type episode later on about the love of Buffy. I think I might have to invite Paul on for that one.
I was just about to say
That could
that.
be his debut on this podcast. But we will be kind of tracking this one very, very closely. So if you are a Buffy fan
Mm.
out there, if you're not quite fully up to date on the news, I might be about to sneeze. The news is up on the website at www.getyourcomiccon.co.uk, and I did a little essay thing the next morning because I had quite a sleepless night just out of sheer
Mm.
excitement because it means that much um, about whether the world is kind of ready for it yet and what it might look like and what it would mean to me to have it back.
Mm.
Particularly where I'm at in my life and my kind of connection to what it was and what it was to me as a teenager. So we will
Yeah.
be following all of that very, 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 very closely as it kind of happens. And if the Hulu gods, Disney Plus gods out there would like me to speak to anyone who is in it, Sarah Michelle Gellar or otherwise, then
Please
please, please.
let it happen.
I got this close to talking to her for Dexter, so and I got to say hi to her for Wolfpack at Paramount Plus. So like we're like we're orbiting each other's like sphere. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. But that leads me on to another TV related piece of news that I thought was worth talking about. This one kind of actually because we were recording so late in the week, this one sort of happened last night and is a bit fresh in everyone's minds. But
Mm.
for us here in the UK, Sky dropped the character posters for season two of The Last of Us and confirmed that it will be returning. I think they said it's 7 episodes this year. From
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
April the 14th, 2025 will be when The
Mm.
Last of Us is back on Sky. So we got three new character posters, one of Joel, one of Ellie, and one of
Mm.
Abby. Yes.
Abby. Yes. Yeah.
So right, this is where I have to admit I still haven't finished the first game. I am aware of the major spoiler from the second one before anybody worries that I don't know what's coming. Um, but I'm like, oh, who is this Abby person? Hmm.
Mm.
What does she what's her impact on the story?
I I have to be brutally honest as well. I'm in a similar boat to you. I've not completed the first game, and I actually don't know the spoiler. I've somehow gone all this time not knowing the major spoiler from the end of the second game.
Oh
I
God.
don't know what happened. Yeah, no one. I think because I've still not completed the first game and I've not even tackled the second one. I think I've deliberately like somehow avoided it at every opportunity. So I have no idea. I obviously am aware there's a character called Abby, but that's about it.
Oh, amazing. I'm glad I didn't say any more. Otherwise, this could be so awkward.
I've also just realised April's going to be stacked for
Yes.
TV because you'll have this,
Yep.
Daredevil will still be going
And
on, and
Andor.
you'll have Andor.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep. It's going to be
yeah,
interesting because we haven't factored in a lot of TV to our schedule for this podcast, but that could it could get pretty serious. And I definitely can't cover all of it. Um, so I've requested to see Daredevil, which I probably
yeah,
won't because they're normally locked down really, really tight.
yeah,
So if there is anybody on the team who is looking to cover either Andor, or actually, I would imagine James might fancy Andor because it's Star Wars, or
yeah.
Last of Us, then excited for season two?
I've not seen season one.
You have not? Wow. Just not
No,
got the time for it yet, or
this always happens with HBO shows. Is that like a new one will come out, and I'll be like, I really want to watch that. Never get round to it, and then the season two comes out, and I'm like, crap, I've still not watched season one. I think it sort of happened with Succession, and then a few of their other big shows. Like I still haven't seen Chernobyl,
I mean,
even though
either.
I own it on, even though I have it on Blu-ray, so I have
Oh
every
wow.
opportunity to watch it.
I'm the same with
Um,
Westworld.
I that was one that I kind of fell off, not through choice. It's just because again, I think at the time of it like reaching its second and third season, I was at the height of my uni, like trying to do my dissertation
That's
and
fair.
stuff.
Yep.
So I was like, I haven't got. I really want to finish it,
Yeah.
but I got like a few episodes in season two and then just dropped off, and then I haven't picked up season three or four. So I no idea where that goes.
In which case, that leaves very little more for me to say, which is good because we spoke about Buffy so much, other than to
Mm,
say there is a season two of The Last of Us. I believe it's 7 episodes. There are three character posters, and it will return on April the 14th, 2025 to screens in the UK on Sky and Now. That's basically all either of us are qualified to tell you.
yeah.
And then the last other kind of news stories that's kind of fairly major in our world, says me, with
Mm,
all of this paraphernalia behind me, is that Robert Pattinson was in London recently for a red carpet event for Mickey 17, which is the new. Now I'm going to get his name in the wrong order, aren't I? Boon Jong Ho.
Bong Joon Ho.
Thank you. Um, Film which is releasing in the UK on March the 7th. We've just very excitedly been excited. We have very excitedly been invited to see it,
Mm,
he says, putting his teeth in, a couple of days before it releases, but we don't know if that's going to
mm,
actually happen yet or not. Thank you very much, Warner Brothers.
yep.
And whilst on the red carpet, naturally, the thing that he is being asked about all the time is not the film that he is there to promote, but is the film he hasn't even started shooting yet, which is the Batman Part
Mm,
2. Now, obviously, the Batman Part 2 originally was set to release this year, would have gone into production last year, was delayed, has recently been delayed again, so is now set to release in 2027, October
yeah.
2027. Um, it was supposed to be the last Batman film of my 30s. It'll now be the first Batman film of my 40s. Thanks. Yeah,
It is what it
but
is.
naturally, nonetheless, he was asked about when production's going to start, and he has said it was going to be
Mm,
by the end of this year. It's going to be later this year, which kind
mm,
of makes sense. We'd initially heard summer, then we'd heard that the script still wasn't quite finished. Don't know that they've fully cast the film yet. Anyway, so it sounds
mm,
like production is going to start at the end of this year. Excited? How do you? Right. So
yeah.
there's like a 50-50 thing. Some people are just like, cool, yeah, can't wait. And other people are like, for crying out loud, why have you not made this film already? Um, have you decided which
Mm.
kind of camp you fall into?
I'm kind of somewhere in the middle because at the same time, I'm kind of tired of hearing about updates of like, oh yeah, we're going to start filming soon.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then it gets pushed back again, and then you get another, oh, we're going to start filming it soon. At this rate, I'm in one of two camps because one, considering how great the first one was, I don't mind if they take their time to get this one right because that's kind of what they did with the last one. But at the same time, I would rather them sort their stuff out, set something in stone, and then start filming.
Yeah.
Then I would look forward to hearing stuff. I'm just kind of tired of hearing, yeah, it's going to be filming soon.
Yeah.
It's not ready yet. I'm just like, right, don't tell us that. Just tell us when you've started
Yeah.
and then I'll be and then I'll be hyped. At the moment though, I'm just like distantly in the distance, just going like, cool, yeah, just tell us when you, yeah,
You let me know
cool,
when you're
just
ready.
get on with it.
Yeah,
Yeah, just get on with it.
yeah. I know exactly what you mean. I kind of hope
Mm,
that the closer we get to summer, the more Superman will ramp
yeah.
up so much that we'll kind of sort of forget a bit about it because we'll all be so wrapped up in
Mm,
Superman-ness. Would have
yeah.
been great if the Supergirl production had been a bit more. This sounds really unfair of me to say. If it had been a bit more
Mm,
open, or if there'd been more to see, then
yeah.
perhaps that also would have drowned out some of the noise about Batman. Because obviously, when Superman got to the point that there was so
Mm,
much outdoor filming, and it's like, oh my God, there he is in the
yeah.
costume. There are other characters. There's all this stuff going on. People kind of
Yeah.
forget about the other stuff because they're being so bombarded by what is currently happening. And I
Yeah.
feel like we've been in a bit of a vacuum, particularly given that last year only had Folie à Deux, that it's like,
Mm,
oh, what else is supposed to be coming up? Well, there should have been the Batman. There should
mm,
be the Batman. There should be. When's the Batman happening? Um,
mm,
but I'm very much in the I will wait until you are happy to fire
yeah.
the starting gun rather
Mm,
than being annoyed that you haven't done it yet. As much as I would love to be watching it
yeah.
now or be talking about a
Yeah.
trailer now or whatever, um, I'd rather they get it
Yeah.
right. I mean, they can't win either way. People will complain about the fact it's taken them too long, and if they were to rush it and it
Yeah.
wasn't ready, and they've rushed a film out that wasn't that good, people would complain
Yeah.
that the quality had fallen off from the first one. So it's sort of a
Yeah.
no-win scenario. But I know what you mean. It is a bit like
Mm,
everyone's sort of saying, "We'll be starting soon. We'll be starting soon. We'll be starting soon," and
yeah.
it's like, well, but that film is still 2.5 years away. How
Yeah.
soon is now?
Yeah.
To quote a
I
famous song.
by the Smiths.
Many
I
people only know as the theme tune to Charmed.
I only found that out the other day. I just know it as the Smiths song. I
Yes,
didn't
good.
know
That's
it
because you're a quality human being.
was.
I've just offended anyone that likes Charmed. Sorry, that was around at the same time as Buffy, but I never got into it.
Oh good God.
There'll be
Um.
complaints.
What was I going to say? I've lost track now.
I've thrown him off completely.
You've thrown me off. One of the things I was going to say is I presume outside of DC as well, 2025 is quite a busy year for comic book
Yeah.
films in general as well. So I feel like with Superman, with Fantastic Four, with all the TV shows that both Marvel and DC are producing, I feel like there's enough to kind of, like you said, distract
Yeah.
people. They can get on with writing and then starting Batman 2 production, and then by the time that's like mid-production ready for a trailer, we'll be like, oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh cool, I'm excited to see something.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like there's enough to, you know, what's the phrase, whet our appetites for
Yes.
2025.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, DC is also, I
Mm,
suppose to be fair, Marvel to some degree as well, because I don't feel like we saw all that much from the shooting of Fantastic Four, other than lots of aerial shots of that sort of township
mm,
that they built. Um,
mm,
I mean, DC has got Supergirl in production right now, as we speak,
yeah.
in London, and they've started shooting on the Green Lanterns TV show, and we're not really seeing, they're keeping everything so locked down. We're not seeing much of
Mm,
anything from either of them. I do like that you talked about how stacked 2025 is, because that's like the perfect little segue into
mm,
our kind of main feature for this episode, which is the first big comic book movie of the year, which somehow
yeah.
feels late, but yet we are only
Yeah.
in February, which would be Captain America Brave
Mm,
New World, which is in cinemas globally right now and is causing
yeah.
quite a lot of talk.
Yeah.
So we're
More than I
recording
thought.
this. It's been out for basically a week. Previews were happening now in the US this time last week. It was
Yeah.
hitting UK cinemas. It'll be a week tomorrow. Um,
Mm,
and it's been a bit of a week for Marvel, unfortunately, I think.
yeah.
Even the BBC are reporting on what's happening with this film in China right now because for some reason it's so newsworthy. Um,
I've not actually seen that.
so
What?
China has now released what is the biggest animated movie of all time, which I
Okay.
don't know the name of off the top of my head, but it's a Chinese production
Yeah.
which isn't really getting a global. audience. I think it has been released in some countries, but isn't really making any money internationally. But it's
Okay.
made 1.7 billion globally at the box office, and
Blimey.
most of that is in China. It's
Yeah.
basically the biggest release of all time, and so naturally, Captain America has come out in China and hasn't got to the top of the box office because everyone's going to see this film. But there
Yeah.
is kind of a campaign in China called Captain America: Brave New World, Dead on Arrival, which is
Mm.
people campaigning for you to not go see it and
Mm.
only go and watch this homegrown film instead. Um, some of
Wow.
it is politically motivated, some of it is just let's champion this film in it
Yeah.
that's homegrown. And yet the BBC felt that that was something to report on, which naturally means that other websites that are trying to champion the death of the superhero movie are then like, look, China doesn't care about Marvel anymore.
Yeah.
Um, it's been a bit of a sad week, which I don't really like because I enjoyed this
Mm.
film. Um,
Yeah.
I gave it 3.5 stars. I did not
Mm.
say it was a perfect film. I enjoyed it. I see no reason to bash it because
Mm.
in my eyes it's not a bad film. You and I haven't
Mm.
really talked about what you thought of it yet. I know you saw it at the
Yeah.
weekend.
Yeah.
I sort of saved myself from asking you too many questions because I knew we were going to be doing this. Um,
Yeah.
and just to warn anyone, we may go a bit super spoilery on this while we're talking about it
Mm.
because it has been out for a little while now. Um,
Yeah.
So, if you haven't seen it yet, maybe pause and come back a little bit later on once you've watched it. Uh, you have been warned. Aaron, what did
Mm.
you think of Captain America: Brave New World?
I'm. I think I like it more than a lot of other people, but I'm firmly in the camp that I think a lot of people we know are in, whereby a lot of it's good, a lot of it's fine, but we've seen better.
Yep.
I think for me, I've seen some people say the opposite, which I thought was quite interesting, but I personally think the first half was where all the choppiness was,
Yep.
and the second half where things were falling into place and everything was kind of smoothing out, ready for the big finale. That, but pretty much from I can't remember exactly, but there was a certain point where that point till the end, I was like, okay, now I'm on board. Now I'm loving it. All the pieces have been established, and it doesn't need to do any more of that convoluted setup. I think the first half did struggle from trying to do too much all at once, which, if you've seen the film or if you know what it's trying to wrap up, it's got a lot on its shoulders,
Yeah.
and I feel like it is trying to do too much. I think it suffers. It's the biggest example I've seen from Marvel in a while where they're so busy trying to sort out universe stuff rather than actually tell a coherent story.
Yep.
There is still a story there,
Oh yeah,
but it
absolutely.
can feel a bit disjointed, especially in this film, which I didn't really feel with any of the others they've released in recent years.
Yeah. There is almost, I think, a weird argument for how they title films now.
Mm,
Bear with my logic on
yeah,
this one. But if this was a TV show, it's
yeah,
almost like The Adventures of Marvel,
mm,
Brave New World.
yeah, yeah,
And that this episode happens to have Captain America at the front of the ensemble. I
yeah,
very nearly said ensemble. It's very flamboyant. Um, because it is, as you just said, spending so
mm,
much time working on the universe and being a sequel to Incredible Hulk from 17 years ago, um, and the Eternals from what, 4 or 5 years ago, um,
yeah,
which is yeah, it does. It sort of it struggles to be a Cap movie despite Cap being the lead, and he very much is the lead, but he's very much the
yeah,
lead in stories which are trying to make sure we know what's happening elsewhere in the world before we get to the next big Avengers team up movie. And the really annoying thing for me
yeah,
about that is I really appreciated it because one thing that's
mm,
annoyed me about recent films, not Guardians 3 because it's not Earth-based, but we've had a
yeah,
bunch of movies that have been a bit Earth-based. So Eternals, the Marvels spent
mm,
some time on Earth, and we didn't
mm,
know what was going on. And it's like
yeah,
people have been annoyed about the Celestial not being mentioned since the Eternals. Fair enough. That hasn't
mm,
necessarily been the forefront of my annoyance, but it is interesting that it had never been referenced up
no,
to this point. And you've obviously had the shows as well, so things like Ms. Marvel happening at the same time. it just felt like everything
Yeah.
was a bit disjointed, and now they've suddenly remembered how to connect things, but they've connected things to
Mm,
the detriment of this awesome new version of Cap, which Anthony Mackie is great. I think he's so good,
mm,
and that he just deserved a bit better. He deserved
yeah.
something slightly more coherent.
Mm,
And as you was just one other point I wanted to make on something that you had said just there, talking about the kind of first half being a little bit messy. The thing that stands out to me is that, and I said this because I was on Cinema Savvy with George talking about this film just last week.
mm,
Each act has its own villain, which doesn't work for me because in the
yeah.
first act you have Sidewinder
Yeah.
and what he's doing, then he gets
Mm,
captured, and then the leader becomes the kind of focal point for a little while until he gives
yeah.
himself up, and then it becomes Red Hulk through the end of the film. And it just doesn't work for me to have three different
Mm,
villains only appear for like 35, 40 minutes. I mean,
mm,
they're all there throughout the film, but them being a kind of lead villain or the villain of the piece only lasts like 35, 40 minutes per character,
mm,
and that doesn't work so much. I need a villain who's well developed, and none of them end up being fully
yeah.
developed.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Funnily enough, I saw a video that was reviewing this film, and they made a very good point that I didn't really consider until having seen the film and how
Yep.
they handled it. And that is the fact that so the guy in the video made a very good point about they should have saved Red Hulk for the film and not splashed him all over the marketing. Because the way the film sets everything up,
Yep.
it's almost as if that would have been better as a surprise
Yeah.
for the final act of the film. But because it's splashed all over the thing, that final surprise, that thing that the film is secretly building to, kind of we already know is
You're
coming.
sort of
So it's
waiting for it.
almost like we're just waiting for, yeah, we're just waiting for it to happen. And
Yeah.
it's a shame because I feel like if that hadn't been advertised, certain scenes like there's a scene about halfway through the film where Sam and I forget the new Falcon's name, Joaquin.
Joaquin.
I feel like that's his character's name. Um,
Joaquin Torres.
they're fighting up a yeah, that's the one. They're fighting up above, around the Celestial, and inside the
God,
ship.
that's tense. That moment on the
That
ship.
whole scene is brilliant,
Mm.
and I feel like it would because at that time, if you would take away the knowledge that we all knew Red Hulk was coming,
Yeah.
we would slowly be piecing things together, going something's not right here.
Yep.
What is going on? And you can start to piece in your head that like, oh, maybe he might have, maybe the leader might have put gamma stuff in him, but because we know it's coming, it's just like, oh, are we going to get the Hulk appear sooner than we think? But no, because we've already seen half of the fight scene in the trailer,
Yeah.
we know he's not going to appear
Yeah.
until
Yep.
later on. But I do think because this film isn't like it's not fully bad. There are, like you said, there are things in it that are good. I think Anthony Mackie and Harrison Ford are the best things in the film
Yeah.
because a lot of the film kind of rides on their dynamic and how they portray these characters. And I think, especially Harrison Ford, is really giving it some
He
and
really
really
is.
adding some extra. Yeah, he's adding more layers to Thunderbolt Ross than William Hurt did, and he did a really good job making that character his own. But I feel like we've got more emotional depth now with the character portrayed by Ford
Yeah.
than we've had throughout the entire 16, 17 years that William Hurt played him, which isn't to do with his performance, it's more to do with how he was portrayed and written and utilized amongst all the films because he was just kind of there as
He had so many
a side
gaps. It
character.
was like, oh,
Yeah.
he's here in Incredible Hulk and he's
Mm,
Hulkbuster, and then he
mm,
disappears for a while, and then he shows back up in Civil War, and he's now
yeah.
a bit more political and dealing with the Sokovia Accords, and then all of a sudden he's now being made president. So it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they had built him up so much more, then there would have
Mm,
been more to it. But you're right. I do think Harrison Ford gets a lot more meaty material.
mm,
And it's great to see him having fun in a comic book movie because sometimes you bring in an actor of that
yeah.
level and they're just um, phoning it in, which he's really not.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
I
totally
nearly
agree.
went to, I nearly made a, drew a parallel there. I'm not sure if, yeah, I'm going to fully commit. I'm going to go Helen Mirren
Okay.
in Shazam! Fury of the Gods. She's really
Yeah.
fun, but she's fun knowing she's there for a paycheck. Whereas I felt
Mm,
like Ford was not just there for the paycheck.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Actually, on that topic, whilst Harrison Ford is well utilized, I feel like they've criminally kind of shafted Giancarlo Esposito
Yes.
as Sidewinder because I know what Breaking Bad's my favorite show of
The
all
whole
time.
world
I know
knows
what
what he's capable of.
yeah, he is a great actor,
Mm,
and he just shows up for like three scenes,
mm.
and that's kind of it. And I was like, is that really all that? To be honest, when the film started, I kind of forgot his character was in it. I thought the main thing was the leader and Red Hulk, and then when he shows up in like the first major scene of the film, I'm like, oh yeah, he's in the film
Yep.
too. This film's just under 2 hours. How are they going to address him as well as everything else? And then the film kind of confirmed my unfortunate suspicions, which is that out to deal with the other two villains, he's the one that kind of gets pushed to the side
Yeah.
so they can get to the leader and all the Red Hulk stuff.
Yeah.
And that's a shame because from the comics, I don't know much about Sidewinder. I would like the films to delve a bit further into him because I feel like there's potential there, but he's just there to cause a problem for Cap, and that's kind of
And
it.
that supposedly is part of the problem with the reshoots, because obviously he wasn't in the
Mm,
original production. He was an addition in reshoots when they
yeah.
took out the original group of the Serpent Society,
Yeah.
because they had put them in, and I can't admit to having seen every set photo, but I have seen some. Um,
Mm,
they were more like their comic book counterparts, which is a little bit more campy and colorful and
yeah.
costumed.
Mm,
And I think at some point they've obviously decided to tweak this film to be more in the vein of Winter Soldier. And
yeah.
that's when they took out, is it Henry Rollins or Seth Rollins? Which one of the Rollins was it? The one that's a wrestler, not the one who's a punk star, um,
Oh God.
who was originally in it, and replaced their character with Sidewinder and retool the Serpent Society from being more of the kind of costumed, campy villains to more of
Yeah.
a like elite task force, which is a bit more generic and less
Yeah.
exciting to watch. And in that, he just ends up being a bit of a wasted character. Um,
Mm,
I wanted to just mention, just because you mentioned Joaquin Torres, I really enjoy
yeah.
the dynamic between Sam and Joaquin,
Mm,
because
that's growing
it's
on
the
me.
first time we've really had a kind of Adam West, Burt Ward, Batman and Robin 1960s
Yeah.
fun hero sidekick dynamic in the MCU.
Mm,
'Cause you get
mm,
a little bit of it with Iron Man and Spider-Man once you get Tom Holland and Robert Downey Jr. on screen together, but
yeah.
never have we really seen two people crime fighting together having a fun relationship, which is
Mm,
so like traditionally comic book. It's fun to have that treated that way on
mm.
screen.
I do feel like because again another thing that this film is trying to wrap up on top of Eternals and Incredible Hulk is stuff from Falcon and the Winter
Yes,
Soldier.
that too. Yeah,
Um, which again is it's almost like oh you think it's finished and then it will just try and wrap up another thing and it's like stop just tell a story. I forgot that he was a character from Falcon and the Winter
yeah,
Soldier. It was only like going into this film that I'm like oh yeah there's the new Falcon as well.
yeah.
I think because he didn't get much to do in that series, that's why I kind of forgot about him. But I do think this film does a good job of justifying his position, and again, like you said, establishing that banter between the two of them.
Yeah.
It kind of it warmed up to me the more as the film went on because at the beginning I'm like I'm not sure about this. It does feel like he's trying to like it feels like he's trying to force himself into a position he's not already in. But then by the end of the film, I was like, okay, I'm kind of won over now, and I'm kind of on board. I want to see more of it so they can develop it more in
Yeah,
the future
definitely.
because I feel like they're only just scratching the surface in this film. But yeah, I'm fully on board with it now. I'm still not sure what to make of. I can't remember her name, but she is the woman who works for Thunderbolt Ross.
Ruth,
That
that's
you
Sarah,
yeah
played by Shira Has,
yeah
former
the
widow.
one that, yeah the one that you find out was in the Red Rooms.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what to make of her character because she's just sort of there, but
Again, completely
yeah.
retooled in the reshoots, supposedly,
Mm,
which is not to get into a hugely political conversation, but there were issues with her character being included in the film because she is Israeli, and then
yeah.
that caused a lot of conversation. And originally, supposedly, in the original cut of the film, she was a mutant as she is in the comics with powers and
Yeah.
costumed, and that
Mm.
that just got in order to kind of take away some of what her character was to tone that down.
Mm.
Um, you mentioning Falcon and Winter Soldier reminded me, of
Yeah.
course, that that is where Isaiah Bradley comes from, Carl Lumbly's
Mm.
character, who Carl, amazing, amazing actor who I love from his time
Mm.
on Alias and voicing Martian Manhunter in Justice League cartoons over at DC. Um,
Yeah.
Amazing central kind of heart in this film as well with his plot line. But does that
Yeah.
mean anything to people who've not watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier who don't know him? Because suddenly he shows up
Mm.
and it's like, oh, it's the other Captain America, and you're like, if you don't know Falcon and the Winter Soldier, you'd be like, the other Captain America.
Yeah.
There's another Captain America. He was in prison. When? What?
Mm.
When did this happen?
It does feel like the film is. This is the problem. It's so busy trying to wrap up loose ends from other stuff that. Because other times the MCU has done this, whether it's either setting up a load of things for future stuff or whether it's wrapping up stuff from other films, it still at some point does a decent job of like going, there's this thing. Oh, by the way, if you don't remember, that's from this.
Yeah,
Whereas with this film, it's like plot threads. Here's all the plot threads from Incredible Hulk. Here's all the plot threads from Eternals, and here's all the plot threads from Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And it just kind of goes, they're there, and now we're going to wrap them up. If you're not up to date by this point, you will be lost watching
mm,
getting certain aspects of this film.
yeah.
There, it's a bit of a tricky one when you're like this far. This is like what the 36th, 34th film in the
I
MCU.
think this is the 35th.
Yeah, and I suppose there is an argument to be had that like, well, if you're not up to date by this point,
You'll never.
it's on the point of no return.
Yeah,
But at the same time, there are people, because I know a few people that kind of fit this demographic where like they don't watch all of them, but there are like a specific series within the MCU that they still stick with. Like
yeah.
some people just
Yes,
watch
true.
the Guardians films, some people just watch the Avengers films, which I think at this point would be a bit of
You're gonna get
a bit of
confused when you come to the
yeah.
next one.
Yeah, but I understand that there's people like that. So I feel like if you're just watching the standalone Captain America films and maybe have watched Endgame and Infinity War on the side to know that he's passed the mantle to Sam,
Yeah,
there's still going to be a lot of stuff that's going to be so alien to you in this film.
yeah,
And again, it's not necessarily the MCU's fault. It's just the way that the film chooses to handle all of those things.
yeah.
Because there's probably loads of people that kind of completely forgot about the whole Samuel Stearns being the leader thing from Incredible Hulk. So
Years ago.
seeing him, yeah, so seeing him pop up
Yeah,
again, they're probably like, who's the the guy that was in one scene for right, got yeah.
yeah.
But even then, it's a bit of a I love the leader from the Incredible Hulk cartoon.
The 90s.
Um, yeah, and
So good.
because I didn't know this because I know that this film went like you said went through extensive reshoots and I can't when I was watching the film I took the look of the leader as at face value. I'm like, okay, they're going for literally distorted and warped
Yeah.
head. Okay, that's what they're going for. It was only after watching the film I then found out that the original design that they fully shot scenes with was more closer to that cartoon where he's got a big head, goatee, and I'm like, okay, now I'm a bit sad.
Yeah. I do think so. I hadn't seen any set photo. I don't know if there's any set photos of him like that. I don't know if there's any production artwork and what was on some merchandise.
Yeah.
Presumably, the original cut of this film is considerably more comic booky and
Mm,
colorful, and
mm,
I guess very cartoony in a way to what
yeah.
this final product is. And I'm interested to know what that film looked like. But I would have
Mm,
liked this Winter Soldier-esque film to have gone harder into that edge because I love that's my Marvel
mm,
sweet spot is the Winter Soldier style of like
yeah.
political espionage drama.
Mm. It it's a weird one because I feel like I feel like the MCU at this point there are specific branches that fit specific styles better than others.
Yeah, definitely.
For example, Guardians has kind of got this weird hybrid where it can do all this kind of Star Warsy space intergalactic stuff, but have like a human element
Yep.
to it. Doctor Strange, which is where all the weird and wacky stuff happens, um, and because even the first Captain America film kind of had a fairly grounded approach
It,
to
yeah.
it, but then Winter Soldier just really cemented that, and then obviously with Civil War, and then Falcon and the Winter Soldier just really hammering in
Yeah.
grounded, gritty, like you said, espionage thriller style
Black Widow to a
approach.
degree as well picked some of that up.
Yeah, and I feel like if I can understand completely why they backtracked and then made this film fit that style more, because I feel like at this point they've committed to a style for the Captain America brand and
Yeah, yeah,
films
true.
that if they then deviated to, I don't know, the Marvels approach or the Spider-Man approach where it's all bright,
It
colourful
just wouldn't work as well,
cartoon,
would it?
yeah, it would just feel really out of place. And I think that might be the issue some people had with the Thor films because they started off very theatrical and kind of grand with the first
Yeah.
two, and then three and four just got progressively more like over the top, wacky,
Give
and
me the Shakespearean Thor back, please. I
yeah.
like
And sorry, you go.
I like three. What's three called?
Ragnarok.
Ragnarok. Do not like Love and Thunder.
No, I really didn't like. I feel like that was the point where Thor Ragnarok was Taika Waititi. I mean, I'm just echoing what everyone else has said at this point. Ragnarok was Taika Waititi doing his thing within the Marvel
Yeah.
system. Love and Thunder is him being given the full reign, and I love Taika Waititi as a filmmaker, but I don't think he should have been given the full reign
Mm.
of a thing because it just shows that they kind of went off the rails a little bit, and that there are good elements in that film as well, which pains me,
Yeah.
but they're kind of just drowned under.
Just layers and layers of whiteitiness.
Yeah, pretty much.
Scientific term for it.
Yeah.
So I said I gave this 3.5 stars. You can
Mm.
read my written review over on the website. What have you thought about what you would score this on a kind of 5-star rating?
I mean, this is the thing. I was after not long after watching it, I was very tempted to give it something like a 3.5, but I settled for just a three.
Mm.
Because there's more stuff in it that I liked than I didn't.
Yes, definitely
But
more than I like.
yeah, but the issues in it are kind of glaring, which is a bit of an annoyance. Sometimes when I don't know how to feel about a film and I'm a bit conflicted, I will go straight down the middle with like a two
Two
and
and
a
a half.
half because
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
right in the middle. But I feel like it's worth three because, like I said, and I think we both kind of agree at this point, it does more right than it does
yeah,
wrong. And there is good ideas here. That's the other thing. A lot of the stuff it wants to do are really good ideas. I just feel like it should have focused on a couple of them rather than all of them at once.
yeah. You definitely. I cannot disagree with you on that. And
Yeah.
there is another point that I kind of want to make, but kind of feel like once this point is made, it kind of becomes a talking point that could be an entire podcast. So I wonder whether it's something that we have a
Talker.
conversation about separately another day. But I
Mm,
do want to sort of dive in at some point to the fact that there is nothing wrong with it's a
mm,
great 1 hour, 58 minutes of escapism at the cinema. It
yeah.
doesn't have to be the greatest film you've ever seen. And just
Yeah.
because it's not the greatest film you've ever seen does not mean that it's way down here, like the worst
Mm,
film ever made.
yeah.
And I know this is kind of a social media thing, but we do very much live in a world of extremes right now, and it does
Yeah.
seem to be that because it's not gonna win Best Picture, it is
Mm,
therefore like the worst thing, and it's
mm,
offensive. Uh,
mm,
Sometimes you just want a good 1 hour, 58 minutes at the cinema, and that's very much what this
yeah.
film is to me.
Yeah, yeah, no, I totally agree. And I feel like at this point now, kind of going off of what we've already said, there's now kind of something to cater for everyone in the
Yep.
MCU. If you want a switch your brain off like fun film, you've got this, you've got the Marvels, you've got Thor Ragnarok. I guess even Deadpool and Wolverine would come into
Yeah,
that category,
yeah,
even though it does have character emotional elements to kind of make it like elevate it a bit further than that.
yeah.
But even then, you've got that. You've got the grittier stuff like Captain America or even the first Iron Man, I guess you could say. Um, and yeah, I feel like there's now a point where there is something in the MCU for everybody. I'm someone that will just lap up any and all aspects of it, depending on how good the final product is. But I feel like if you don't like one aspect, there's bound to be something that you like
Yeah.
in that. There's 35 bloody films.
There's something for everyone in there somewhere.
Yeah, I mean the fact I made a, not to plug my channel, but I made a video right at the start of this year talking about an aspect of the MCU, especially in the current phases, that no one really talks about. And putting quality aside, no one talks about the variety of genres that we
Yes,
get or the
definitely.
variety
It
of
is something no one talks
styles.
about.
Yeah, and again, if you this is something that people kind of hounded me at in the comments because I kept saying if you push quality aside, I more meant that in a sense that like whether you love it or hate it,
There's still a
forget
variety.
that.
Yeah,
You've got so much variety now.
yeah,
Multiverse of Madness and Werewolf by Night that caters to your horror. Um, Eternals is kind of this sprawling sci-fi epic.
yeah,
Deadpool and Wolverine's technically a road trip film, I guess. There's something for everyone
yeah.
now, and that's not just in the types of films, but that's literally in how they're constructed as well. And I think more people need to take that
That's
on
an argument
board.
that I often have with people about DC's last few years of films. In
Yeah.
that, yeah, you can argue about the quality of them, but what
Mm.
you can't argue with is the fact that they've experimented.
Mm.
Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, very much experimentation in the style of storytelling.
Yeah.
Black Adam was trying to do something a bit more Marvel-like. There's
Mm.
been a lot of experimentation. Joker, had we ever seen
Mm.
a comic book movie quite like that before? Even
Mm.
when they've made films that haven't done so well, Joker followed a musical. Um,
Mm.
they've at least experimented, and I think we've forgotten how to appreciate trying to do something that's not just straight down the middle, basic norm.
Yeah.
Again, a conversation for another day.
Oh yeah.
Um, if you want to read more about this film or my review and other thoughts on it, then yeah, please go check out all our coverage over on the website. Um, Comic books. Uh,
Mm.
I realize we've been talking for quite a long time, so we probably don't have a huge amount of time left. But obviously, this podcast and this website is called Get Your Comic On, and we've not talked about comic books on this podcast since the first episode 2 months ago. So I was like, I have to. Aaron's on. Aaron reviews comic books for us on the website. We have to at least try and find some kind of comic book conversation in there, which
Mm.
I badged very broadly as what are we reading right now? Um, so I wanted to talk about Power Rangers Prime,
Yeah.
which just literally just this week dropped its fourth issue. Um, and finally, if you are reading this, we get to see the Power Rangers, the new team of Power Rangers, suit up for the first time, and it is sublime. It is so good. This is written by Melissa Flores, and illustrated by Michael Yig, and it is. I don't know if I've talked to you about this before. I think I might have mentioned it in that last episode. This is the
Mm.
first time they've done an entirely original, ongoing series of comics. So
Okay.
it is a slightly different version of continuity, but it still has some characters from Power Rangers TV series and stuff. But
Yeah.
it's not doing Mighty Morphin as a comic book. It's not doing any of those. It's completely original.
Mm.
Um, and they've been so slow burn with it that this is the first time we've seen them suit up. One Ranger suited up in the very, very last page of issue 3.
Yeah.
And that's the first time we've seen anyone in costume. So you can imagine picking up a Power Rangers book and being made to wait 3 months to see someone in costume, and then 4 months to see an entire team like suited up and ready
Yeah.
for action. But it's just so well written, and they're just allowing it to be its own thing, and it's awesome. It is like one of my favorite things right now. If you're not reading it and you're a Power Rangers fan, you really, really, really should pick it up because it is
Mm.
so good. It's so good. Um, what are you reading right now?
I'm reading a lot. There's an
That
awful
is
lot
my
to.
fault.
I'm not complaining. I love having to read this much. I've got three recommendations, and I'm not just picking these because these are the three most recent reviews I've done, but I'm
Hmm?
also highlighting them because they are three genuinely really good series that I don't think are getting talked about. So the first one is The Lucky Devils, written by Charles Soule. I never know how to pronounce his surname
I'm pretty
properly.
sure that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, and artwork by Ryan Brown. I think I mentioned this on
You did. Yeah.
the first one. Season two,
Episode
issue
two?
two. Yeah, issue two came out last week, and it isn't improving the series. It's just kind of okay. Here's the style and tone we're going for, and we're just going to keep riding that as a consistent thing. It's very funny. It's not afraid to go to places that you think it's going to go to, and the fact that it's about two devils trying to manipulate their way up the ladder in hell, it's obviously going to go into some weird places. The last episode, each issue focuses on like I said episode again, didn't I?
Keep going.
But each issue is themed around a layer in
Is
hell,
it?
like from
Okay.
Dante's.
Interesting.
And I didn't really cotton that in the first issue, but in this one, it's very abundantly clear that this one is about lust because
Nice.
they do things that in this episode with the people, the humans that they manipulate, that I'm like, okay, they're actually going there. Wow, cool. It's funny. It's not for a faint heart read, but it is very good. It's just very funny, very fun. It has fun with its concept as well. Um, Another one that I want to highlight is Behemoth, which is getting better with each issue. Um, it's very simple premise. This it's basically what if there was like a Godzilla style kaiju attack in a city, and a load of survivors got swallowed by the monster, but they're still alive in the monster, and you're following these people trying to get out.
Oh.
Um,
Oh.
Issue one was fine. It was fun for what it was, but it was very much that initial setup of just trying to get the ball rolling with the concept. Issue two, they're in the creature, and now that's where they can have fun with the premise.
Mm.
And the fact that this is written by actual screenwriters, and I think I can't remember if it's Ryan Engel or Grant Sputer. One of them had involvement or is having involvement on the next
No
Godzilla
way.
and Kong film. So this is kind of perfect,
Yeah.
and you can tell that they know what they're doing. And there's a lot of elements that feel very reminiscent of Cloverfield, which is one of my
Oh,
favorite movies of
amazing.
all
I've
time.
been really craving a
Uh,
rewatch of that recently.
yeah, I every now and then, every like few months, I'll just be like, I really want to just rewatch the first Cloverfield for no reason other than the fact that it's still bloody good.
Yep.
Um, but there's a lot of elements, especially in this second issue, that remind me of that. Um, but yeah, it I can't wait for the issue three. God damn it! I can't wait for issue three because I think it's a very limited series, so it's like eight or
Okay.
nine
Yeah, yeah.
issues. So it's a very tight, condensed story.
Which is
So that's
sometimes
awesome.
exactly what a book needs.
Yeah, I think if this one went on any longer, I feel like it could outstay its welcome. Where because I know it's a tight, self-contained story, I
Yep.
feel like it's gonna work because of that. Last one I want to highlight is Barstow, which started last year and has just had its third issue. This one, the second issue was absolutely brilliant. I loved everything about it. This issue is also good, but unfortunately, that second issue was so
Oh, high
good
bar.
it was going to be quite hard to, yeah, quite a high bar to top. This issue is still very good. It's giving me very much preacher vibes if you're into like Garth Ennis style
You've mentioned that
writing.
before.
Yeah, the tone is becoming a lot more obvious now in terms of that's the style they're going for.
Yeah.
Set in a small like you know American town, there's a lot of weird things going on, very demonic things. It's got a rather stupid sense of humor, but I kind of love it for that.
Irreverent.
And yeah, yeah, and it's everything's starting to piece together now in issue three, which I think is also quite. In issue one, it was like there's a lot of stuff going on. but it's obviously not going to make sense. Yeah, issue two was just a really well told issue, like in terms of its writing. In issue three, it's like, oh, okay, this element is starting to piece with that, and all of it's starting to converge into one. And I can't
Perfect.
wait to see where this one goes.
Awesome.
I don't know how many issues there are in total, but again, I think it's quite a limited story. This one.
Awesome. I was going to sing the praises of Star Trek, which I did in that last episode that you and I were on together.
Mm,
Um, I was talking then about the big event that they were planning for this year, which is called the Lore War, which is like the end of the Star
mm,
Trek multiverse. I need to be really careful what I say because they've given me a super early read of it, and it's oh
mm.
no, I think the embargo lifted today. I can say everything.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so issue 29 just dropped in comic book stores this week, which is kind of
Yeah.
the last bit of lead in to this event. And it's a really, really wonderful story that just loops in loads of different bits of Star Trek history.
Mm,
But it's going into this huge thing called the Lore War, which is this big event
mm,
that's all over the Star Trek multiverse. And the first issue is kind of like a different version of Star Trek's mirror universe, which 50% of the audience are going to go, "Oh, I like them." The mirror
mm,
universe. That's where everyone has beards and is evil, and the other half is like, oh God, not the mirror universe again. But it's really interesting, and I don't quite know where it's going to go. Um,
mm.
but it's a really fun read, and I've at this point, I think I pretty much always give it 5 stars because I can't. It's just so Star Trek. I just love
Mm.
every episode or issue, depending on how you want to describe it.
I can
That
take a hint. I
that
can
might
take a hint.
See, what I'm thinking is that could become like when we do a comic book episode, which I'm now calling
Yeah,
issue. Um,
yeah.
that could be the drinking game. Every time one of
Mm.
us says episode rather than issue, just take a shot.
It's because I'm so used to talking about film and
Exactly
TV.
that.
It's like
Yep.
episode just comes more naturally off the tongue, whereas I'm still new to talking about comic books on the regular, so I'm just like episode, issue. Damn it. It's like I've got Tourette's.
I really want to make it more of a regular feature in podcasts that we talk about either
Mm,
an issue, like maybe we
yeah.
do like a book club type thing where it's like this week we're
Mm,
going to talk about this thing, and maybe we both read like the same issue or something, or two or three of us read the same issue or something, and then all come in
mm,
and talk about it. But it's I don't know, it's difficult when it's a like an ongoing thing because if I
mm,
said we're going to talk about the next issue of Batman, which is
yeah.
like 100 and I think it's number 152 or 153 or something like that, or 300 and something, then
Mm,
you're going to be like, well, I haven't read the other like 200 issues that go before that, so I don't quite have the same context. And I don't know quite
mm,
how it would work, but I would like to do something like that. You just need to figure out the logistics of it. Um,
yeah.
but before we wrap up, I do want to talk about a competition. We haven't had a competition on this podcast for a little while, and this one is super fun. Uh, a lot of you who know me on social media will know that I spend a lot of time hanging out at DC related events. And one of the people who you see very regularly at those is Paul from DC World. He, during the pandemic, started a web store called the Geek Garage, which you can find at geekgarage.co.uk, which has now become a shop, which is number 73, the High Street in Wickford, Essex, for those of you who happen to be UK based. And it's grown massively, which has been a really cool thing to see. It's gone from this thing that he started as a kind of a can I do it during the pandemic to now actually
Mm,
being his full-time job. And it's gone from like a stall to a small shop to now a full 7 days a week available like store, which is incredible. And it's
mm,
really cool to see. So he reached out to me and he was like, hey, let's do a thing, let's team up. So we are teaming up with the Geek Garage to give away some swag this week. I have two little gift boxes to give away, which includes I'm just looking at them on screen here, and so I can be jealous because there's a couple of prizes in here I'd really like. Um,
mm,
there is a Lego Speeder from Star Wars, which has got it's got some droids in there. We've got some Bitty Pops from DC, which have got some really cool little super mini Batman characters in. We've got some Pokemon cards. We have some Funko Soda Pops, which people go crazy for. I've got one Batman one.
mm,
We've got a Batman. We've got a Harley Quinn. They include these like super limited edition, what they call like chase variants that are like one in a
yeah.
thousand that are
Mm,
really difficult to get hold of. Um, and then there's this really cool new style of Funko that I'd not seen before, which is like a comic book character with it's in like a supersized box that has a panel
mm,
behind them. So it's Cassandra Cain's Batgirl, who is one of my favorite characters in DC, swinging off a rooftop, and you've got this really cool comic book
mm,
panel original behind her as the Funko Pop. So two of you could be walking away with some very cool Geek Garage swag. All that you need to do to enter is to go find us on Twitter, follow us at Get Your Comic On One. Underneath the tweet with the links to this episode will be a tweet with the competition hashtag and all the details. And you just need to retweet that, making sure you use that hashtag to enter. UK only just because of postage rules, because otherwise I will be bankrupted. I wish I could give things away to those of you all over the world. But believe me, every time I have tried to, it has gone horribly wrong. But thank you to Paul and the Geek Garage for giving us those prizes. I will share a picture. I will put it on screen so that you can see the fun things I'm talking about that you could walk away with. But go to Twitter, go and enter that competition. I will put the details on the rest of our social media as well so that you got all the details you need to enter. That, I think, because I'm about to lose my voice, is it for this episode. If you want to find us on social media, we are at Get Your Comic on most platforms, at Get Your Comic On One on X. I'm supposed to call it X, right? Not Twitter. Do I call it Twitter? What do I call it? I
I,
don't know.
it's technically X, but I think most people still call it Twitter just because, we're normal.
If you are looking to find me on social media, I am on all major platforms at Neil Vag. Aaron, where can people find you?
Good question. On most platforms, I am at Arun Azza, but I do also have a YouTube, Aaron at the Movies. I will post more videos. I haven't done one since late January, but I will post more. I'm trying to. So those are the two places you can most likely find me.
Please make sure to like and subscribe to this podcast wherever you are listening or watching us. It helps us to find a bigger audience. Also, if you want to leave us a review, then please do. Again, it just helps us get out there and get more people listening and watching to all of the hard work that this wonderful team of people is doing. What is coming up next is a little bit up in the air. We were talking about this before we started recording. We might be talking about Mickey 17, which is in UK cinemas on March the 7th. We might be talking about 20 years of the 2005 Keanu Reeves Constantine movie because it is celebrating its birthday, and that makes me feel so old. There's a lot
Mm.
of fun things going on. The good news is that I finally kind of got off my arse and kind of have a bit of a plan through the rest of this year, which I have never had a plan that far ahead. Um, how much of it will actually work, I do not know. But we're having fun recording as we go anyway. So that's that. I'm going to stop talking. That is all from me. Please do stay safe, stay well, and we will see you next time. Thank you again, Aaron. Bye.
Thank you.